Want to find your seat for the event of your choice but can't get one that fits your desire or your budget? Well, my friends, SeatGeek has you covered. SeatGeek is the official sponsor of the Snake Sports Talk Show. With a list of over hundreds of events to choose from, SeatGeek will assure you that you won't miss your seat with the amazing view of your choice at the most affordable price. Whether it's looking for your best seat in the house of your favorite sports team, finding live concerts to get you closer to your favorite artist, or enjoying your spot at your favorite live shows, comedies, and more, SeatGeek has it all just for you. Go online to SeatGeek.com or download the app on your mobile device through Google Play and the App Store. And as a special offer before checkout, use promo code SNAKESPORTS and save yourself $20 off of your purchase of your first ticket and experience why SeatGeek is the most trusted ticketing app for your next event. Remember, that's SeatGeek.com and download the app on your phone with promo code SNAKESPORTS for $20 off and find your seat with SeatGeek.
And now, broadcasting live from Las Vegas, the Snake Sports Talk Show with Jake Silva starts now.
Here we go, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, it is that time again. We are live on a Thursday here on the Snake Sports Talk Show, wherever and however you may be watching and listening. Thanks for making us a part of your evening. We're live all over every media known to man. Roku, iHeartRadio, all social medias where you can like, follow, subscribe. Hit the bell button to keep you up in the latest episodes of the show. We've got a special guest knowing everything about baseball that there is to come. Paul Sullivan, Sully, for the Sully Baseball Daily Podcast. He's going to be joining us here in about a couple minutes, but we got so much to unpack. Timberwolves and the Dallas Mavericks tonight. Will fate be in store tonight? Do the T-Wolves potentially force this matchup? Or could the Mavericks win, go to the final, and face off against the Boston Celtics? So much to talk about. So, Sully coming up here in about a couple minutes. But one thing I wanted to talk about, so the news that broke out earlier is the Miami Dolphins, they have signed their number 2 receiver, and that is Jalen Waddle. So Waddle is now paid. Tyreek Hill has been paid. Teron Armstead, he's been paid. The real question now that remains is, when will Tua get paid? So I was saying this earlier up on my show and with a special guest, Lake Lewis Jr., who broke it down as well with the Jared Goff contract. As I said, Goff's Detroit guaranteed contract, $53 million a year, over $200 million for at least the next 4 or 5 years. This was going to impact and it was going to shape the quarterback market. So now that Jalen Waddle has been paid, Tua's now asking, when's the payday coming? Or will I get the payday with Miami? Miami's got a lot to prove this year because they've lost a couple defensive pieces that were very impactful, including Christian Wilkins. But they do go and give themselves an edge rusher. They do go and give themselves a couple of really good quality pieces to help out. But Jalen Phillips is coming back from an injury. He may not look the same, but hopefully he's rehabbed it. He's better, and that they're going to be back up on track. But Miami's offense, as you know, fully loaded. They added OBJ. They added in a couple pieces. It's the fastest now that you've seen. I mean, Malik Washington they got from Virginia. I mean, guy's got some speed. Mike McDaniel loves speed. So the thing you got to understand with Tua, and like I've said before, I thought Miami was really going to draw the line with him when it came to the draft if they were going to draft a quarterback, but that's not the case. I think Mike McDaniel loves Tua. And I think the Dolphins and Stephen Ross, and however that this goes about, they like Tua. But this is a proven year for Tua for a few reasons. Number one is, can you play well in the cold? Can you play well when your key players are injured or are not available? Could you also play when your back's against the wall, when you're going for a division title, you're going for a playoff game? Can you do that? Tua, as we've seen, doesn't like being mistake prone. He gets pissed. Anytime he makes a mistake, he takes it out on himself. And I get that. A lot of quarterbacks will feel this way. But in this instance, Tua, that we know, has suffered concussions. He's had an injury history. Tua has played in the cold unsuccessfully, hasn't been able to play at his best. And I know the very, very cold weather in Kansas City, I know it got everybody, and including the fans. But when you also have the division title, and look, division titles are one thing. But when you've got Buffalo twice a year with Josh Allen, hopefully Aaron Rodgers can last on the field more than 5 minutes for the New York Jets. You got them twice a year. And then you got the Patriots. So putting all of this together, is Tua worth the money? Well, we know what Tua looked like before Mike McDaniel got there. Benched 5 times in his rookie season with Brian Flores. But once Mike McDaniel came into the building, he's been productive. He's been efficient. I don't know if the deep ball throw is necessarily as what we would like it to be, but he works every single day. So he's getting better. But this is the thing. Many teams have gone through this because they've asked themselves, is this the quarterback for our future? Chiefs did this with Alex Smith when it came to drafting Patrick Mahomes. We know right now, weird pick for the Atlanta Falcons, but maybe it pans out. They take Michael Penix because who knows if Kirk Cousins is going to be efficient enough after that Achilles heel. And then you look at many other teams that have done this. Joe Flacco, they won a Super Bowl with Baltimore. Now they're with Lamar Jackson. They groomed him up nicely. So is this going to be the scenario with the Dolphins, or are the Dolphins maybe patiently waiting for what the next 5-6 weeks are going to give us in the season before the payday comes? Remember, it's not that easy when it comes to this. I like Tua, and I like how he's looked thus far with Mike McDaniel. But is he that one to give you over the hump? Is he that one that's going to give you exactly what you want, especially in playoff games? Who knows? But my hope is, I hope he does become successful. I hope he does get the payday. Whether it will be with Miami or maybe it might be elsewhere, whatever the case may be. But I think the Dolphins are kind of taking this very, very critical as they go. After just paying Jalen Waddle, you gave Tyreek Hill his money already. Teron Armstead's already got his money. Multiple players have basically got their money, and now everything rests up on Tua. Now, I'll be honest with you, and maybe this is maybe a hot take of mine, but I feel like Tua with the Dolphins is going to get the same similar treatment as what Dallas has done with Dak Prescott. You franchise tagged him twice. He's played under those franchise tags, which are not cheap either. They're pretty expensive. But you tag him twice to where now you have no choice but then to have to pay him the high dollar money. And because of the Jared Goff contract extension now, where you got Goff who's making a lot of money, you got Burrow who's making a lot of money, Herbert who's making a lot of money, Lamar making a lot of money, Patrick Mahomes making a lot of money, Tua's sitting there and going, hey, I'd like to be paid, well respected. I'd like to deserve some piece of that pie, but it just depends on how things will literally come into place. But I think that's what they're doing. I think they're playing this safe. They're being very critical about it, but hopefully it pans out and it goes well for Tua and for the Dolphins. And if it don't, Tua will get his money somewhere. And the question will be, will he be the same productive quarterback in the next scheme that he's under? That will be the big question mark. But good for Jalen Waddle. But all we can do is just be patient for Tua and see how this thing pans out. All right, so my guest here coming up knows a thing or two when it comes to baseball. Locked up on MLB. He knows a lot about the A's as well, and we're going to be jumping up onto that. But we got a lot to unpack with what's been happening currently up in baseball. But joining us, Paul Sully Sullivan. Tell you, a lot of action been going on in the world of baseball, but I do start with what happened recently, and that was involving the New York Mets. So Jorge Lopez. Yeah, obviously, I've had a choice of words when it came to the whole situation, but I broke it down like this. I understand the frustration. I really do. But here's my thing, and what people did not realize. When they saw the interview in the post game. Now, look, you can be frustrated all you want. Throw your glove, throw a tantrum. I don't care.
Yeah.
But when you're in the locker room and you're trying to basically give an explanation as to what happened, my hope is, look, we are playing like we are the worst team in baseball, but I'm not going to say we're the worst team in baseball because then it becomes a bad rap on the organization. And sometimes GMs don't like that. Owners don't like that. So I'm somewhat on the part of I can understand the frustration, but then I can also understand of, look, I don't want you to put a negativity on my brand. What, like, in your opinion, how did you view that?
At first, I wondered if it was a language thing. I wonder if he was just saying, like, we're playing like the worst team in baseball or something like that, and it just didn't come out right. You know, I mean, if I signed with the Montreal Canadiens, je parle peu de français, but I bet I won't get some of the subtleties of it, some of the nuances. I will stub my toe. So at first I gave him a pass, but then he doubled down. And it's also like this is not like he just arrived from, this is his first year coming over from Puerto Rico. I mean, he's been in the major leagues for a decade now. So, and he knows he's in New York. Now, granted, most of his career, and he's bounced around a little bit. He's played in Milwaukee and Kansas City and Minnesota and Miami and in Baltimore and places where, yes, they're passionate fans there, but like the beat reporters in Miami is a guy named Dave, as opposed to New York where they have a feeding frenzy news cycle. So I think it's less of a language barrier and more of a you're in a big market barrier, buddy. The funny thing is they designate from assignment. He's actually not been pitching that badly. He's not having that bad a year. I was kind of surprised that they cut off the nose to spite his face. I could understand benching him for a little bit, but now they DFA'd him and he's going to wind up. I've been urging the A's to sign him because at least he could say, hey, you're not in the worst team in baseball anymore because you're in a division with the Angels. But it was the wrong move to do, but it's also a moment of frustration. You can't say he's a young kid. He's 31. So it's not like, hey, he's a young hot-headed kid who's new to America. No, he's a 31-year-old man who's been here for a decade. So he probably should have known better. But hey, if he wanted out of there, he found a great ripcord to pull.
Oh, yeah.
And, I think he'll find a home and he'll probably play in the postseason. This will hang over his head for the rest of his life.
Yeah. And I think, because in the end, you do make a great point is like, this ain't no stranger. I mean, the guy's old enough. He knows exactly what gets reflected upon as a professional athlete. He's not like,
he's a former all-star.
Yeah.
He made the all-star team.
He came off such a great year, and I'm just like, but I think in the reality is that I'm just seeing more and more of just this becoming a dumpster fire for a high payroll organization that I'm like, look, I cannot figure it out with the Mets. It's like they're the highest payroll. They can't figure this out, but I can say this. I'm not going to put Steve Cohen in the burner because the fact of he's providing the money. But the
Right.
problem is that they are not getting enough, I would say, quality character guys in that locker room that know a thing or two when it comes to consistency, when it comes to, I need this play, and they are bad. I mean, yeah, that's what this is.
I think they made a smart decision last year, and
Mhm.
that is they cut bait on a couple of their players and they sold. They
Yeah.
pushed all the chips to center of the table, and they didn't go for the sunk cost fallacy. They
Yeah.
saw it wasn't working. So they got some good prospects back for Verlander and for Scherzer, and they pumped a little bit of youth into the team. And I think this is not a team they're expecting to win this year, and I
Mhm.
don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. I think that they're saying, "Hey, look, they did the move where they pushed everything in and tried to do what I like to call Operation 2004 Red Sox, where they're like, all right, we got to win, so let's just pump as much money into this to get everyone off our back." It didn't work, and so they said, "Okay, let's try to get younger and not throw good money after bad." So this isn't a team that is going to win. They're not better than Philadelphia. They're not better than Atlanta, even with Ronald Acuna Jr. They are probably not going to make the playoffs. They're probably going to have a losing season. And I'm sure that's frustrating. If you go to New York with an expectation you're going to win, you look out and said, "Oh, crap, we stink." And there are worse teams, but keep this in mind, Jake. I know this sounds weird, but there's a such thing as a long-suffering New York fan. I have what's called the rule of 7 on my podcast, Locked On MLB. Check it out. I have what's called the rule of 7, which is you don't really start forming memories of sports or basically anything in the news until you're around 7 years old. I'm a 52-year-old dude. My first memory is of the 1979 season, right there. And Jim Rice, Dave Parker. I remember that. I'm not young enough to remember the 75 World Series. So if you are the last, unless you count MLS, which I don't, because every player in MLS would jump ship to Real Madrid in 3, 2, 1 now.
Yep.
The last major New York championship was in 2012.
Yep.
It was 12 years ago. Rule of 7, if you're younger than 17 in New York, you don't have a memory of any championship. It goes back further if you're a Yankee fan, back further if you're a Devil fan, and if you're starting to be back if you're a Ranger fan, and if you're a Mets, Islander, Jet, Knick fan, may God have mercy on your soul. And you don't necessarily think of New York as long-suffering fans, but we have never, since the advent of modern sports in the 20th century, seen a drought like this, because at least every decade, either the John McGraw Giants or the Yankees or the Knicks in the 70s, someone would win something.
Yeah.
So maybe the Mets are thinking, hey, if we build a team from within that will win, this will be the most loved team in a generation. And so it may be worth building it up. But when you're in the middle of it, every once in a while you see a team that's in the middle of a rebuild have a fluke championship, like the 2013 Red Sox. They were a fluke. They were a rebuilding team. They got a bunch of veterans. Rubik's cubed into a title. It's not going to happen this year. And what they're hoping is that with a lot of their young players, they'll be really good in a couple of years. But when you're stuck in this vortex of this feathered fish, they're not bad enough to be horrible, but they're not good enough to really be a contender in a wild card where 500 keeps you in contention.
That's right.
It must be and of course, and as we've seen, getting that third wild card spot meant a pennant for the Diamondbacks last year, a pennant for Philadelphia the year before. The Braves were a sub-90 win team that won the World Series. The Nats were a wild card team when they won. So getting that wild card means a lot. I said, we're not even good enough to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you throw your glove into the crowd.
Yeah, it's very interesting because, and you do make great points because, I mean, that wild card spot could definitely mean a lot. And, and again, there are teams that could come in hungry, where a lot of them, they got the underdog mentality. And so I just am hoping, and it's so funny you make that point because, look, I'm crossing my fingers because I've had this prediction. I'm hoping the Rangers win it all because that's my big thing with New York because, you got to have something. You got to have something that's recent. But I felt like there's been such a twist because it used to be like the East Coast was a big money market. They were winning titles. They were doing this. And then now I'm getting mixtures of West Coast, Midwest, a lot of those teams now that are coming in hungry. They're coming in competitive. And they just haven't had an answer for it. They'll stay in the competitive, but they haven't had an answer of like getting over that hump to then bring a recent title, into the East Coast. That's why everybody's all looking at, is Boston going to end up winning the finals? Like, are they going to have the finals championship with this group with Tatum and Brown? Hopefully, but
Jake, take it into account. There is a scenario where the second longest playoff drought in Dallas will be the Rangers.
Yeah.
Because you're going to have the Stars could very well defeat Edmonton. Mm-hmm. Dallas is probably going to get in there. And the defending champs are the Rangers. And that could be, oh, man, got to give those Ranger fans a break. It's been a while. It's been months since they've won a title.
That's true.
And I won't even say anything about the Cowboys. I don't really care about the NFL, quite frankly. I stop. When you get to my age, you pick your lane, and I think you could see which lane I picked in terms of sports fandom there.
Absolutely. That's why we're here chopping up baseball and all the rest of it, man.
Well, and I'll tell you, one of the things that's really nice is because right now you're seeing there's a bunch of teams in the National League that are really bunched together within. You have Los Angeles and Philadelphia are the two top teams. I would put Atlanta up there, but that's a great Jenga piece you took out with Ronald Acuna Jr. And the last time they lost Ronald Acuna Jr. was so devastating they won the World Series. Now you have, Milwaukee is kind of close to there, but then you have a bunch of teams that are going to be mid to low 80 win teams. And what that means is a lot of them, and because they have images of the Diamondbacks and the Phillies recent years dancing in their heads, they're going to probably all go for it, which means that, first of all, if you are a bad team, they are going to pick your carcass like crazy. It's a seller's market. But it also means that teams are going to try to keep their clubs together, which I think is great. If you're a team like, let's just pull out Cincinnati. Cincinnati no one's going to mix this team up with the big red machine of the 70s. But if they win 84 games, you have a shot to get in there. And there's talent on that squad. You're just asking, and we've seen the Dodgers wet the bed enough Octobers. You just say, hey, if we just get the right situation, who knows? This could be something, which is enough to sell tickets and to get a generation of people interested. By the way, Jake, isn't it interesting that the focus of Northeastern bias has seemed to dissipated with the fall of ESPN?
Oh, isn't that
interesting that since we've been able to compartmentalize how we consume our sports media, that it's no longer beholden to Bristol, Connecticut, but it's actually, I can follow who the hey I want to follow.
Yeah.
And so with that, if I just obsess over the Spokane Indians, I could just have my feed be nothing but Spokane Indians all day, every day. That, by the way, is a minor league team for the Colorado Rockies. But so the whole.
Well, what do you know? I'm around here in the Denver area, and I'll be there in Coors Field in June 17th. So I'm excited about that one. But oh yeah.
but the idea of like, oh, it's all Northeast, so it's all Northeast power. No, it's you're seeing money is being spread out a little more. There's a lot more on the West. I'm in California here, and some of the biggest spenders are here on the West Coast in ways that they never were for years before.
Yeah, I mean, even in my hometown in Las Vegas, we're starting to get new money that's starting to come up in there, and that's something we'll talk about as well down the back half. But yeah, it's now new money. It's so nationally spread that like it ain't even just one particular focus. There you go. It's not one particular focus, but now it's all over. It's now nationwide. Like it's all over. And so the one thing I wanted to get to was this. So recently, and I think everybody in baseball, including you and I think we all have been at this point where now we're screaming, hallelujah, the day has finally come. Angel Hernandez is retired.
Yes.
Look, I have said this before. The days of the robotic strike zone are coming, but it should not trump over the morale of the game for a few reasons, because we loved that stuff. It was just quality, it was quality content every time it came on. Every time we watched Sports Center, every time we watched a lot of the stuff. So with Angel Hernandez finally retiring, this now kind of gave more oxygen to a lot of the baseball fans, because yes, worse after worse after worse calls. But in the end, it's sending a message like, look, we are trying to build the quality here. We are trying to get everything in place. How did you kind of see this from the end of it?
On May 23rd, 2011, which was almost 13 years ago, I made a video about why aren't we using automatic strike zones? We have the technology.
Yep.
We see it. We just, whatever goes in that box, that's a strike. We see it in real time. I said that during Obama's first term. Okay. I want to go back there. Okay. There were, I believe Ken Griffey Jr. was still active. I might be wrong on that, but it was, no, he had retired. Okay, fine. But Albert Pujols was still on the Cardinals the first time around. All right.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to put a button on this here. So I've been screaming this for over a decade. And one thing I hate, I like how a lot of instant replay is done. I know it was a bit lumpy at first, where they had to go in to a photo mat and come back 4 hours later with your photos developed. My take is the good folks in New York should be watching it. And oop, this might be a close call. This might be a close call, because okay, if you see what they'll probably go to, get that thing going. And the minute you go like this, it's 30 seconds. This would be my rule. You get 30 seconds. If after 30 seconds you can't tell, screw it. The call on the field stands. And I don't want this to be like the Zapruder film where what his toe up, down, up, down. No, it's to avoid an Armando Galarraga situation, or or an Orta in the game 6 of the 85 World Series, or an underrated one. Watch the 87 World Series Game 7. There are 3 massive blown calls, 2 at home plate, and one that would have ended the rally that the Twins tied the game. Would have been that the replay showed, they blew the call. The Twins tied the game and went on to win the World Series. Poor Cardinal fans. 2 out of 3 years they get hosed. But the strike zone, I don't want to hear about, I want the human element. The human element is the pitcher and the hitter. I'm sorry. If you're a pitcher, you got to throw that strike. We saw that this afternoon when the A's and the Rays were playing that game, and the pitchers always had that stupid Manfred man at second base. You had to throw strikes. You had to be throwing the great control in there. And it's got to get into the box. I don't want to hear an umpire, he calls the high strike. He doesn't call the low strike. He's a little bit off today. Or, hey, it's a close call and he's a great pitcher, so it's going to go to him. No, it's a strike. It's a strike. You don't hear it. I don't follow football much anymore. Do you hear I don't call it a touchdown unless it's in the middle of the end zone. That to me is not it. Or, you know what? If the ball goes around the rim and falls off, I still count that as a basket. No, we see what the freaking strike zone is. Mm-hmm. Now, there's still a lot of things to do for human being umpires on the field, okay? But I have no compunction. Look it up, some sports fans, what that word means. No compunction to having it go to the zone and you hear strike, ball. There's no arguing. It went in the freaking zone.
Right.
AutoZone. I don't know if they're a sponsor. But if it goes in there, that's a freaking strike. Whether you are, whether you're the best pitcher in baseball, whether you're Garrett Cole or whether you're some schmuck just called up from Worcester, if you threw a strike, it's a strike. And if you're Luis Ariz with your great batting eye, or you're a utility infielder wetting his pants because he can't believe he's in the major leagues, and you don't swing at a pitch that's outside of the zone, that's a ball. No matter who you are. Now, what you do with those, that is part of the human element. But when you have people like Angel Hernandez, what it does is it changes reality. It really, obviously the Armando Galarraga thing is the most obvious egregious. He threw a perfect game.
Yep. Oh yeah, and Jim Joyce absolutely got emotional.
And he knew it was everyone cried a little about when he exchanged lineup cards, and chances are we remember that blown one more than if he had actually pitched the perfect game, because there's a few perfect games in history that I forgot. Like Philip Humber's perfect game is not as well known as Armando Galarraga's blown perfect game.
Or Dallas Braden's perfect game there with
but Dallas Braden calls the A's games and he can't shut up about it. But but nor would I. If I threw a perfect game, I'd say, "Hi, I'm Sully. I threw a perfect game."
Of course.
And I will order the chicken roll. But you're changing reality. If you watch that '87 World Series and they called one of them went for St. Louis. Don Baylor of Minnesota slid home. Steve Lake, the catcher for the Cardinals, reached over to tag him. He was called out. Every replay showed that Baylor's foot got in there. Should have been a run for Minnesota. The play that Joe McGrain, the pitcher for the Cardinals, was covering the base. They threw it and said, "No, you didn't touch the bag." The replay showed, no, his toe did brush the bag. That would have been an out. You've changed reality. You've altered reality. And we've had enough multiverse movies to know that that's dangerous if you start messing with the realities of the world. And if we have the technology, and don't overdo it, as I said, 30 seconds. 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi. Get 30 seconds is enough, because if not, we move on. But the strike zone, boom, boom, boom. There it is. Throw it in that. Mm-hmm. And you will know what it is. We will tell you what it is. And why we don't do that is I've been screaming for it since 2011. My hair was much darker in the video that we made in 2011, but it's still on my head. And that is the best part of it, that I'm not bald at my age. But still, enough of us were pulling our hair out for Angel Hernandez, because you don't want to know the umpire's name.
Yeah.
You don't. Once it becomes the Don Denkinger game, the Jim Joyce game, that's the worst. I'll tell you though, Jake, what it does make me think about is how many games in the past was there a Jim Joyce level blown call that we'll never know.
Oh,
that we'll never know. And I for one, as you know, I've read a lot. I'm a baseball historian, and Billy Martin is someone I've read way too much about in my life. And yes, when he would get into screaming arguments with umpires, it was phenomenal. The images of Earl Weaver,
oh yeah,
it's unbelievable.
Sparky Anderson, anytime yeah.
But also, I would much rather. I'm willing to sacrifice great arguments for reality.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. And I mean, like I said, it has been all a part of the game for ever since, since the dawn of time. And it's like, but when it gets, and that's the thing. And that's where, I think that if you do this right, because this is why the NFL's ratings have gone up so high as it is, because the fact that they have the technology, they're probably the best, I would say, the best salespeople, because they know when you get the schedule out and then you got the streaming services and then you got this, they just know how to sell. But then in baseball, we know that the one thing that they've worked on is now you got the pitch clock. It's now starting to shave off at least half an hour of a game to where it's making it faster. It's making it a little better. But then at the same time, it's very strategic. But then in the end, it's I just want to be able to have a quality baseball game. But because you're never going to get that kind of stuff in the postseason. Good God, I hope not. But
No.
it's like, in postseason, it's a totally different world.
Yeah, and by the way, as I mentioned before, I'm going to plug a book that I didn't write and I don't know the author, but it's called the Lords of the Realm. It came out in the 1990s, and if you ever want to read about the history of baseball from behind the scenes, not the games
Mhm.
being played, but everything about what's going on with the commissioners, what goes on with expansion, what's going on with the strikes, what's going on with the potential, the near rival leagues that came out, and one of the things that definitely happened in the 1950s and the early 60s was that Pete Rozelle figured out we're making television shows. We're not a football league, we're a television show. And
Mhm.
he figured that out. And he also figured out how to market stuff. And he figured out how to merchandise stuff. And baseball had every opportunity to do all that stuff in the 1960s. And they kicked it. They kicked it down the road out of complacency and out of like, well, we're already, we're already the biggest sport. So why does anyone care? And the nanosecond the major media shifted from newspapers and radio, which were the absolute perfect media for baseball, to television, which is the perfect medium for football,
Mhm.
football took over. And football to this day continues to market the sport better, continues to make it's not necessarily that the games are better. As I said, I'm not a football fan. I don't think I can name 6 NFL players.
Mhm.
And one of the NFL players I know as the guy dating Taylor Swift. I mean, that's pretty much what I know. I grew up in New England when the Patriots sucked,
Mhm.
and I didn't care. And but also I have a real problem with the sport that only plays once a week. I love that every single day I have another game to watch. And don't get
Yes.
too high on the big win because you got to play again tomorrow. I love that rhythm. I need company after a long day on a Thursday night. I don't want to hear about let's check out the injury report. No, show me a game. But I understand football has marketed itself better, has presented itself better as a spectacle and as a program, has marketed their stars a lot better, and more importantly, has made it so everyone has a football jersey or hat or something like that in a way that they don't with baseball. And that you could trace all the way back to the 60s and how they've turned the freaking NFL drafts an event.
Mhm.
Is there anything that on paper is more insanely dull than all right, coming up next is from Washington State University offensive linebacker Steve Tagliente. Hey Steve, I just want to help them win and I'm really looking forward to helping them. But it's an event.
It is, yeah.
It is an event, and baseball, I have some ideas of events like that if I ever become the commissioner. And at this point, I really think it's only a matter of time. But I think there are events, but they've tried to do that with the Major League Baseball draft, and it doesn't work. Because okay, here's a guy from Arizona State. All right, see you in 3 years,
Mhm.
maybe. Bye. Here's a high school player. See you in 7 years, maybe. Bye.
Yeah, I just think, the quality of it, when it comes to baseball, because I mean, baseball's been in my background in my family for a long, long time. I
Mhm.
mean, the thing, and I'm like, this lottery draft picking thing, I honestly think for Major League Baseball, it does not work
Doesn't
because if
work.
I'm still getting all these low market teams that are still getting canned every time by the high payroll ones, or at least the mid payrolls for all that matter, like if they're still getting canned, it's like there's no love for them. And I'm like, why not get it to a point where I've got the best prospect? And yes, it does take a while because going through the minor league system, all this other stuff, but it's like the product itself has not mastered itself yet. And that's kind of where it's like, yeah, you watch the NFL, the product is amazing. And then
Right.
all of a sudden you look at Major League Baseball, it's like, well, it hadn't fully like it's almost like you're finding a diamond in the rough. Well, it hasn't quite shined and it hasn't quite found its like, its quality yet. And so it's like you got to do something about that, and
Yeah.
something to make the product better.
I mean, I'm a huge fan. I mean, I obsess over baseball. It gives me pure happiness. It's my friend who's always there. I'm doing a trip to Cooperstown I'm flying out to upstate New York in a couple of days. I'm going to be doing a little,
loved Cooperstown. Been there before. What great history.
And baseball has as we're reading more of the integration of the stats, if not the players of the stats that have happened recently, and Turkey Stearns right behind me now finds himself in the top 5 in all-time batting average. We're seeing that there is baseball is at its best when it taps into that timeless quality, that illusion of timelessness, that the past, the present, and future are happening simultaneously, and that there is a connection you have with the players in the past and everything. And when it plays on that, it's at its best. I think baseball can't it's not going to compete with football because it's not the same thing. Right. It's not the same type of product. There is a connection you have. Like where is he? Right? Is he? Oh, right back there. You can't quite see him. Right back there. There's Rabbit. I have a picture of Rabbit Marinville, who was my grandmother's favorite player from the Boston Braves in the 1910s. Wow. You feel these connections that you have, and it's one of the reasons why baseball fandom is almost always going to be provincial. It's almost always the interest is always going to be local. I've lived in Boston when the Red Sox are great and when they stink. I've lived in New York when the Yankees were terrible in the early 1990s. And I've been there when they won 3 straight championships. Same thing with the Mets. I've been in California. I've been in the Bay Area in time to see both the A's and the Giants in the World Series, and I've seen them both be irrelevant. I now live in Los Angeles County. I've been here when the Dodgers were so bad that people were afraid to go to the parking lot, and now they're a lock for 100 wins every year. And I see when the team is good, the local team is good, the interest is absolutely through the roof. Casual fans come out of the woodwork. Everyone wants to be part of that. And when all of a sudden, like I've seen it like the last couple of years, I'm a unicorn. I follow every team. But I've seen, like, if I want to have conversations about baseball, I better become the biggest Dodger fan you ever meet in your life. Because when the Dodgers are in there, and I go to work here in California, buzzing, everyone wearing Dodger hat, Mookie Betts, da. The second they got eliminated, plunk. Hey, did you see the? No. Why? Why would I continue watching it? The Dodgers are no longer playing. And the two greatest World Series I ever saw in my life was Minnesota versus Atlanta. 2 teams I didn't have a dog in that fight at all in 1991. Good luck starting a conversation with anyone when that was going on. Hey, do you see the Twins and the Braves? No, you live in New York. Why do you care? Because it's the best World Series I've ever seen in my life. But it's not that way in football. I think gambling plays a part of it, but I also think because it's more of a national appeal. They have a full week to promote the stuff. I know as much about the NFL as I do about fly fishing, but I thought it was more interesting. Living here in Los Angeles, it was more interesting before the Rams and the Chargers showed up, because there was no team here, and you saw people like, "Oh, I'm a big Vikings fan. Oh, I'm a big Patriot fan." I was like, "You're born and raised in East LA, yeah, but I love my Vikings." It was more. And what I thought they should have done, I thought they should have built this new stadium and played Monday Night Football there every week. And every week you had 2 teams come in, and if it was like Patriots, Giants, it would be like the biggest thing. But like Monday night in LA should have been a weekly event, and you would have sold out the dump, and it would have been amazing. But no, they had to put 2. The Chargers are in Los Angeles. It's the stupidest thing I've ever heard of.
Believe me, I've had my words on it, and like they should have never left San Diego, in my opinion, especially when you're out there by that beach weather, and it's just like, come on, like that has been.
But what did you see what has happened though? I've nicknamed San Diego Buffalo by the Sea, because San Diego has this incredibly jinxed sports history, but it will never get the credit for having it because it's by the sea and beautiful. Part of the idea of your suffering fan base is you have to shovel your driveway while complaining about your team losing, not cutting a tube, which actually makes me feel worse for San Diego fans who lost both their basketball and their football team to Los Angeles. Remember, they were the San Diego Clippers and the San Diego Chargers. And the only time the the San Diego Padres have ever won the World Series in their entire history was in the Gary Coleman made-for-TV movie in 1980 called The Kid from Left Field, which I remember, and that probably means nothing to you because I'm showing my age right now. But have you noticed, tiny market, to the north is LA and Orange County, to the east is the desert, to the south is Mexico, to the west is the Pacific Ocean, and yet they're breaking their attendance records in San Diego because the management said, hey, I have an idea. We're the only team in town now. Why don't we invest in the GD team and try to make them halfway decent? And you've seen, the Padres have never drawn like this before.
Oh,
and
yeah.
I've always thought that should be the model for what the A's could have done. First of all, the Padres play in one of the most beautiful stadiums in the world.
So gorgeous there.
It's unbelievably gorgeous. But it also is, hey, we're going to, I know this is this is a strange concept to have, but we're going to invest in the team. We're going to make we're going to show that we care and that we're trying. And also, we're going to make the experience of going to the ballpark a magical experience. So you have a whole generation of Padres fans who still haven't seen them. The Padres still have only one World Series game they've ever won in their history. Yep. And yet there's a whole generation of San Diego fans saying, well, this is our team. And it's going to be a provincial interest. And I don't want to get too ahead of myself because we're going to be talking a little bit about what's going on with the A's, but I think that you'll see that baseball needs that more than any other sport, more than hockey, more than basketball, more than football. It needs that sort of, this is our home team that we can embrace, because following a baseball team isn't the same as every Sunday we're going to have a party. It's every day we could see these players every day in and out. I talked to my mother-in-law who loves the Giants up in San Francisco. And my mom lives in the Bay Area, watches the Giants every day. And you'll hear it's like, oh, what do you think? Oh, Doval didn't look as good yesterday. Chapman, he's in a bit of a slump. And they become your friends for that summer. And it's not always about, did we win the World Series? It's, these are your friends during the month. You're cooking dinner. You're doing your chores. You got the Giants game on. You got the Padres game on. You get to know who the people are. Mm-hmm. And you get that more than, in hockey, it's, it's kind of like going to a punk rock show,
It's intensified. Somebody's going to get thrown into the mosh pit.
My friend Noelle is the biggest San Jose Sharks fan I've ever met in my life. She has teal fingernail paint, and I've gone to Sharks games with her, and lovely, beautiful, very genteel, feminine-looking woman who suddenly turns into a terrier, a Rottweiler. That's what a hockey fan is. Mm-hmm. Basketball is a little more glamorous and a little more star-oriented because that's how they built it upon the stars. Even when you talk about who won the title that year, Bird won the title that year, Jordan won the title that year, LeBron, which LeBron, Miami, Cleveland, or LA LeBron? It was LeBron. It doesn't matter. Kawhi won this year. In Toronto, maybe. I don't know. I know he won it. But baseball is really a provincial game. And it makes for a fan. The fandom has to, whatever fandom you have has to be based in that and rooted in that. Yeah. And this isn't just me waxing poetic of the glory days of blah, blah, blah. No, I've seen Dodger fans. I've seen Giant fans and Yankee fans. I've seen from on both coasts and in the middle. And it's eerily similar, the relationship you build to a team that's there every day.
Yeah. And it's very funny because the fact that and you bring up a great point because, I just think the problem of it is with a lot of these teams is you don't have enough owners that are invested in baseball. Some of these owners are they're owners of a tech company. And then all of a sudden, something like that where they're investing the money up in it, but they're not really invested up into that team, which brings the point about the A's because listen, I've lived in my hometown of Las Vegas for over 28 years, my entire life. And I've gone to many baseball games in my life where they were the Stars, they were the 51s, they were now the Aviators. And so, and I loved it because it was a fantastic night at a ballpark. You're drinking beer, you're having a great time. And So now Vegas is now officially on the sports map between the Raiders,
Yes.
Golden
Yep.
Knights, and now having the A's. My big thing is, and I've had choice of words with the owner of the A's, because in my hometown, we are the kind that we love to have a team here.
Mhm.
But if somebody's going to come up out of pocket, we're hoping that the city does not get punished over with the fact of the tax now starts to get implemented in a non-tax state in Nevada. And then at the same time, there's got to be some sort of guarantee with this fan base, because at the end of it, you're selling them for a ballpark that, like, in the end, where's the promotions up at? Where's the stuff that is going to, guarantee we're like, hey, we're invested up in it? Because it's going to be very hard to trump the Golden Knights fan base because of being the expanded team. They rooted there, and everybody in that town of Las Vegas is just so invested. That's why I've always said the Raiders are a Cali team to me, because that is very hard to try to trump that. So
Well,
with that,
I just got. I'll say one thing just immediately. Sorry to interrupt, but to tack on that immediately, the Golden Knights were the first one.
yep,
They were the first one in, and let's also not forget they were good right out of the gate.
that's
They
right.
they got to the finals out of the gate. They've already won a cup, which makes every hockey fan in Canada say, "Really, really? We've been waiting since there's not been a Canadian Cup since a Canadian team winning since 1993. It happened to be the Canadians winning in '93, but
Yep.
still. And Las Vegas has a cup that happened to interrupt the Tampa Bay dynasty. Seriously, but they were the first ones, and so that's a big thing that's going against the A's. You mentioned one thing very important that's going against the A's, and I'll get to that in a second. But if the A's were the first one there, if there wasn't the Golden Knights and the Raiders didn't show up there, and the A's were the first major league team to show up in Vegas, even with a bozo like Fisher running the dump, okay, there would be the novelty of, we got a team. There's an actual a Vegas team exists, and there would be a freshness to that. That's gone. That will never happen again. That has been taken away. Also, we'll win a title. No, a team has shown up and won a title. So both of those are off the table for the A's coming in. And so expecting any enthusiasm, and you note who the person owning the damn team is, you're going, this guy pocketed the revenue sharing year in and year out, hid behind Moneyball. The whole idea of, we're doing Moneyball, that's why we're cutting costs. No, you're cutting costs. And by the way, Moneyball worked because they had Zito, Mulder, and Hudson, and Miguel Tejada, who I don't think they mention any of those people in the movie, but I digress. Mm-hmm. And so now they're, let's cut costs. And gee, why won't fans show up? Well, you raise the ticket prices. There's sewage and possums running around the stadium. The stadium's completely falling apart and crumbling. I was there earlier this month, and I love going to A's games. It's a carnival, but not because of anything that the fans that the organization has put into it.
Oh, God, I daunted when that pipeline still was not fixed since 2011.
No, since 2011. And they say, well, we're not getting fan support. I don't know why. Well, why are you? They said there's only 6,000 people there. I say, oh my God, 6,000 people showed up. I mean, that's what you should be saying when like Mason Miller is going to be an all-star. All right, He blew the save today. Today's a bad day to bring it up. But up until today, he's been lights out. What are people saying? He's a rookie who's a sensation. And they're already saying, well, who can they get for him at the trade deadline? When you already know that anyone who's going to ask for more than $4.75 an hour is going to be traded, and said, they're not investing in their fans aren't investing in the team. And they're hiding by, well, that's how we do things. We moneyball this. No, you're not. You're cutting costs. You're cutting costs drastically, and you're making it so there's no reason to go to the ballpark. I love to go to the ballpark because the fans are there, and the fans are amazing, banging the drums, waving the signs, and everything like that. But yeah, you can't expect 60,000 people. Sorry, I had a little cough there. I was getting into it. You can't expect 60,000 people to show up when you've raised the prices to watch a minor league product in a crumbling ballpark and say, well, we don't have the fan support. Look at what happened when the Haas family ran the team. They invested in the team. They kept their players. And when they went on that run in the late 80s, and I was there at the Oakland Coliseum during, Canseco, McGuire, Ricky Henderson, Dave Stewart, Dennis Eckersley, Carney Lansford, the Tony La Russa years where they won 3 straight pennants and another division title. They had they were in the top 5 in attendance. Okay. It was the Giants who were going to move because they were playing in freaking Candlestick, which sucked. Yep. Candlestick was arguably worse than the Coliseum. But then what happened? Haas dies. The strike hits right around the time the A's start their big hope from Van Poppel and everyone to build a team from that farm system didn't work. The A's gave territorial rights to the Giants to San Jose, hoping that would mean some sort of movement of the Giants, as they were probably going to move to Florida. And right around the strike hit, decimated attendance throughout baseball, and the A's weren't that good anyway at that point because they'd gotten old. And by the time the A's were starting to get good again, for whatever reason, the city of Oakland and everyone decided to build that monstrosity in center field, which was Mount Davis, which looked like they parked an aircraft carrier in center field of what was a really cool ballpark. Mm-hmm. It was a circular concrete donut, yes, but a beautiful view of the mountains beyond in the East Bay. They had that great, the flowers and the grass and the handheld scoreboard and all the memories of Reggie and Raleigh and Sal Bando and all of them coming to life. And suddenly when we're good again. Ugh, this place sucks. And it became, and at that same time, it's now called Oracle Park. It was called Pac Bell. Pac Bell opens this beautiful ballpark in the Bay, and Barry Bonds is hitting home runs into the Bay. So which one do you think got the attention? Yeah. And then everyone fell for Moneyball. Yes, it's good that they did on-base percentage and everything. But they also had 3 Cy Young contenders. And the reason on-base was so important was because they wanted to hit 3-run home runs because everyone was jacked up on roids. Mm-hmm. And so that led to the domino effect. And it does break my heart to say this, but again, read the Lords of the Realm by David Hellier. The Bay Area is probably not a 2-market team. Yeah. The nanosecond the A's arrived, constantly, either the A's or the Giants threatened to move. The Giants almost became the Toronto Giants. They almost became the Tampa Bay Giants. The A's almost became the Denver A's. They almost became the New Orleans A's. I mean, since they arrived, one of the team was looking for a way out. Good and it just happened. Yeah, and so, I mean, again, the A's fans who follow the podcast Locked On A's that I also host will be like, I'm not betraying the trust of the fans. Oakland fans are incredible, but it's probably if we all took truth serum, we would all say it's not big enough for 2. It's really not. And maybe a move would have been inevitable. It just would have been better if it wasn't so sleazy and dishonest. And in the end, I mean, we're talking as if it's a done deal they're moving to Las Vegas. Here are some of the details that we don't know. What's the stadium? Where's it going to be? How's it going to be paid for? And when will it open? 4 minor details. I actually think they're going to go play in Sacramento for a couple of years. Mm-hmm. I think Las Vegas is going to say, "Do we have to do business with this guy? Yeah, aren't we better off waiting for an expansion?" And which I think they're going to do that. I think they'll get the expansion team, and I think the A's are going to stay in Sacramento. That's my prediction. And you can go to BetUS, SeatGeek, or whatever your sponsor is.
BetUS and SeatGeek. Oh yeah. And that's the big thing is because like I feel for a lot of the Bay Area fans because in the end, from most of the movement from Philadelphia to Kansas City to Oakland and now potentially, they'll be playing, a couple years in Sacramento and then eventually moving into Las Vegas. But I just feel a lot for this fan base because
Oh
they
yeah.
deserve
Oh,
more than this. Because,
oh yeah.
look, I've followed the A's probably since 2009. And
Mhm.
my big thing is I just loved it because the fact that this team's getting younger and they're bringing in new talent
Mhm.
every
Yeah.
year. I mean, I've been there since the Andrew Bailey, the Cliff Pennington,
Trevor Cahill was on the team,
Trevor
right?
Cahill was on that
Yep.
team, and then Tommy Malone and Jared Parker, which,
Oh yeah, yeah.
oh man, there were so many really good players, but then they could never retain them all. Like I've
Yeah.
said it before, I was like, that Cespedes trade was awful because that was a battery to that lineup that got everybody going. I'm like, why are we getting a guy like John Lester when Jeff Samardzija in 2 starts was pitching the best games of his life, and then Jason Hamill comes in? Why do we even need that? And it's like some of those things, it's like it never added up to me.
One of the other things, and I talked about this before, it's going to be the biggest punch to the face is that everyone's left Oakland now.
Yeah.
I mean, if the Warriors had stayed in Oakland or built a new arena or built the place where in one of the places where they were thinking about building for the A's,
Mhm.
but if they had stayed in Oakland. And I think they should change their name to the Oakland Warriors, but that's another thing altogether.
Yep.
Then there would have been a symmetry for sports in the Bay Area. You would have had a Major League Baseball team in the city. You would have had the 49ers playing in Silicon Valley. You have the Sharks playing in the South Bay. You have the Warriors playing in the East Bay. And each region has the team that's there, but it's all the Bay Area. But now the entire East Bay is wiped out. That the first championships of the Bay Area were won by the Oakland A's, the Oakland Raiders, and the Golden State Warriors. They
Yep.
were won in that parking lot before any San Francisco team won piddly poo. And that now Oakland is gone. And you think about like if just one team was there, some of the legacy of the Raiders and the A's could still exist. It's kind of like you have like Andre Dawson and Gary Carter and Tim Raines. They have their names up on a banner at Montreal Canadiens games. The Expos don't exist there anymore. Whether or not they exist, they'll ever come back, I don't know, and neither do you. But there can be at least an acknowledgement for the sports fan. Where is Ricky Henderson legacy going to be after they move here? Where is the John Madden years with the Raiders going to be? Where is, I mean, think about all the great teams and the great players and the legendary players. I mean, just in baseball, and Ricky Henderson is specifically the one that I'm worried about because he's one of the 5 greatest offensive players in the history of baseball.
Oh,
And
100%.
and oddly underappreciated.
Yes.
And
Oh man, he brought swag. He brought a lot of that swag that made what the Bay was on that.
And he was ahead of his time because he understood on base percentage. He understood what it meant. And he changed the leadoff role. He changed what it meant to be a leadoff hitter. And where will the statue of him be? Where will his legacy be? Because as I said earlier, baseball exists in the past, present, and future. You go to a game at in Pittsburgh, they'll have Honus Wagner's name up there.
Yep.
They'll have Pie Trainer's name up there. You go to Yankee Stadium, they have Ruth, Gehrig, DiMaggio, all of them. And they do have, if you go to a Giants game, they do have John McGraw and Carl Hubble and Mel Ott and the great Christy Mathewson, the great players from the New York Giants. But I always feel that's a little disingenuous because they didn't play in San Francisco. And I give the Philadelphia Phillies a lot of credit because they have a statue of Connie Mack and honoring all the great Philadelphia A's who won multiple World Series in Philadelphia and were the team of Philadelphia before a strange series of events led to them moving. That's a whole other conversation to have. The A's are snake bitten, but there is no place like that for Ricky. You're not going to put something out for him in San Francisco. He didn't play for the Giants. He beat the Giants in 1989. What are you going to put him down at a Sharks game? Or by where the Warriors play? Or where is one of the 5 great players in the history of baseball going to have his legacy be immortalized beyond, eventually we're going to lose Ricky.
Yeah.
And I'm fear that his legacy will disappear. If the A's, let's say the A's stay in Sacramento or they go to Las Vegas, wherever he is, Ricky didn't play there. I sound
Yeah.
like Ricky talking in the third person.
Yeah.
Ricky sometimes talked in the fourth person, which was really kind of difficult. But I mean, it would seem disingenuous if you were at Vegas and there's a statue of Ricky Henderson and Dave Stewart and Reggie Jackson and Raleigh Fingers and Catfish Hunter and all of them. And that's something that I'm, for the lack of a better word, I don't want to say tragic because we see what real tragedy is, but it just makes me sad because it will, you're going to lose the legacy in that history and the history of the Oakland A's. And by the way, they played in Oakland longer than they played in Philadelphia. The history of the Oakland A's, that includes that great 71 World Series and a couple of great runs, is worth celebrating. And I think it's going to fade into obscurity.
It's funny you mention it because one of my family members, he wrote a column and had been a longtime diehard Raider fan, and it explained so much about just Oakland in general, when the fan base, because it was like they've always had a say. When you were a Raider fan, you were a Raider for life, and that was the one thing, and they were very passionate about stuff like that. My hope is, and I can tell you from a background, is Vegas, many people ask about it. What kind of town is it? I've said it's been a baseball football town. I've grown up in I was born there in 95, and I've been, because gambling was such a big thing, and that was when you started. Yeah, you started getting. Yeah, you started getting. You started getting all the sports books and everybody all up in it because everybody had to bet a football game. But in the end, it bled baseball because there were so many different fans of different teams, and everybody loved going to a baseball game. I could go to a minor league game and I could catch somebody with either an A's, a Cardinals, Mets, a Giants shirt. I could catch jerseys of all kinds. And it was like, because they were there for the love of the game. And it was just like, that was what Vegas would always be known for when it came to baseball history. But my hope is, I hope they don't build a statue either. I think what they should do is make it more of a collective commemorative memories because of just the timeline of the organization. I think that's more of the respectful thing because it respects the city of Oakland and what they gave, and especially for those players, that it would leave the legacy there. But it would be a collective commemorative thing for the entire timeline of the organization. I think that's a right thing to do. It's more of a positive gesture till until then something pivotal does happen. Then you can maybe then negotiate it down the road.
Right. I think the closest thing we've had to this is when the Dodgers left. Because Brooklyn, the identity of Brooklyn as opposed to New York was so strong that was their, that they the folks of Brooklyn cling to the Dodgers as their identity. I'm old, but I'm not old enough to remember the Brooklyn Dodgers, but I've seen that my many friends from the Bay Area, those who grew up in the East Bay, they cling to those East Bay teams because no, we're not San Francisco. We're not the Silicon Valley. Yep. We're the East Bay. And that's a weird sort of Venn diagram of sort of, blue collar workers on the docks, some tech world, but also, hippie life from Berkeley, and, a strong African-American and Latino culture from Oakland, kind of all mixed into this sort of mosh pit that is very similar to what Brooklyn was. And that when of course, the Dodgers had their hearts ripped out when the team was still elite, which is really surreal. But when they finally got a new team to root for, it was the Mets, who had the New York moniker. And for the first couple of years, they had to go to the Polo Grounds, the home of the Giants, to watch their team play. And while Brooklyn became predominantly Met fans, it was a sense of, no, but you're New York now. We've co-opted it. And no one's embraced the Nets quite yet, but that's going to take a generation because the Knicks are the unifying team of New York. You could be
That's right.
You could be a Jet and a Giant fan punching each other, a Met, a Yankee fan punching each other, an Islander, Devil, Ranger fan punching each other. But everybody, save for three guys named Sal, rooted for the Knicks. Like I was there when the Knicks were in the NBA Finals in the 90s. I was there when the Nets were in the NBA Finals. Believe me, the level of interest was the Nets might as well have been the Sacramento Kings.
Mm-hmm.
It just was like they play in the distant world of East Rutherford, New Jersey. But hell,
even when you had
but maybe Brooklyn will develop that. Maybe in a generation or so, Brooklyn will have that identity through the Nets. But who's going to come to Oakland?
Yeah.
That's why I wanted the Warriors to stay, because at least Oakland would have the Warriors. And they don't. And it sucks. To quote Voltaire, it sucks.
Yeah. And I mean, it would have been much more understanding with the Warriors being there up in Oakland, because it was like you had the town like that was basically rooted, and it was just like that's a piece of history up on there. I would be more understanding if the Warriors had stayed, and then you'd sacrifice, these other teams, but to not have anything at all is just like, now it's just become an entire ghost town until you get into San Jose, where you got the Sharks up in there, but that's not it.
And when the Sharks first arrived there in the early 90s, and when they first started playing in, Christ, I forget which, it's the Compaq Center, it's the HP Pavilion, it's I forgot which SAP Center, I forgot which tech company owns it today, but it became the team of the South Bay, and the people in the South Bay embraced the Sharks with both arms, because we're finally on the map. We're finally on the map. And I remember the San Jose Mercury News coming out with articles saying, by the way, it's very clear I've lived at a bunch of places in this conversation, but
absolutely.
The Merc were putting out articles of, here's how you follow hockey. Okay, got it. And they fell in love, and the Sharks fans went crazy for this team, mainly because San Jose was now a city on the map. The only thing that anyone knew about San Jose before this was that Dionne Warwick song called "Do You Know the Way to San Jose," about someone who literally could not find San Jose. So, I mean, the fact that they found it and that it became special for San Jose, it would have been special for Oakland. That's why I said, having the U where, Giants, Niners, Sharks, Warriors. You get the whole Bay. Instead, everything's on this side, the East Bay. You get nothing, and you'll like it. And it's sad. It's very sad. I wish the Warriors stayed, because that's the bigger kick to the groin, that Oakland gets nothing.
Yeah,
and Oakland deserves something.
Yeah, I absolutely. And I was on there basically where I felt bad just for the city, for the town itself, and just that side of the Bay, because it was just like, look, everybody that's moving up north, where you got San Francisco, you got Sacramento, and it's just like they got their spiel, but then there's no love up in there in the Bay, and then all of a sudden now, I mean, my stepdad was originally around in Riverside, up in Ontario. He grew up around in that area, and he'd been there, like diehard Raider fan. Used to go to games in the old B2000 little pickup truck whenever the Rams and Raiders were playing in the Coliseum. Like, that was the old days of LA. And it was just like, you witness history that way. But then just that to happen is just, I was at a loss for words. I was like, I couldn't even believe it. For as long as Oakland itself had thrived for that long of the period, now it's now just decimated. It's just one of those things I always will hold dear to my heart. So the side notes of the baseball history of how far it goes back. My stepdad originally played in high school with a former and now a Kansas City Royal Hall of Famer, former catcher who backed him up, Mike Sweeney. Used to play high school with Mike Sweeney. And the only way Sweeney got in...
All-star Mike Sweeney.
Yep, and the only way Sweeney got noticed and got in was because of a collision at the plate, blew his knee out, and then that's when Sweeney came in. And that was a one big thing. And then my real father got scouted by Mike Lieberthal's dad. And and so it was like, and my mother, who's originally from Long Island, and she absolutely loves Craig Biggio, Stony Brook kid, like absolutely loved it. And she's been there at the time that the Mets won in '86, and then has been a Yankee fan for years and years. But, the history of baseball is just so surreal, and it's amazing. And it's like, because my life had been rooted by baseball, because there's so many adversities we face on a daily basis, and we're managers of our own lives. We're managers of our own decisions. We're managers of, how we set the tone in the house, like we're managers of our own selves. And that's where I give back to baseball because of that much. And like I said, I'll be there in the 17th next month when I'm watching the Dodgers play the Rockies, and the Rockies are just nothing but a family business, honestly, when you really look at it from the inside out. But I'll get a chance to see that. But being there in the ballpark, it'll be the second major league ballpark I've ever been to in my life, because it's 6 years old. I was there at the original Yankee Stadium when they were playing. Funny note is they were playing the A's that day. And when you had Jim Abbott pitching, I mean, the work of art of a lefty was just unbelievable. But that stacked 2001 team, and just absolute great memories. And the two World Series that were my favorite, 2001, Yankees Diamondbacks, 2014, Giants Royals. You are not going to get that much of a just grit and grind type of World Series. It didn't even care if you hit a home run. You were playing quality pitching. You were hitting. You were getting into everybody's heads. Like that was my favorite kind of World Series. I loved that.
By the way, the last my father died a couple of years ago, and he was my we would used to target stadiums that were facing the Rutgers Ball and try to go to games there. So we went to a whole bunch of stadiums that don't exist anymore. So we could say, oh, we've been there. But the last baseball game I ever went to with my dad was Game 3 of the 2014 World Series between the Giants and the Royals.
Wow.
My dad's been a Giant fan since the days of the Polo Grounds, and that's the only World Series game I've ever been to, was that game. And Bruce Bochy's Giants won every single World Series home game they played, except the one game my dad and I went to. They lost Game 3. So, but yeah, that was the last time I went to a game with my pop, was that World Series that you mentioned. So that's obviously that's means a little something to me.
But God, so remarkable though, because the fact that, I mean, you're taking a Kansas City team and a San Francisco team that just every single play, every pitch, every inning was just that meaningful, that it's like, look, I got players that are capable of hitting home runs, but that's not on our minds. We're about getting on base. We're getting quality hits. We're getting quality pitching. And we were just fighting all the way into the end. That was, yeah.
I hated that Kansas City team because they beat the A's in the wild card game, which the A's had 2 outs away from winning twice in the same
and
God, I still
see
home
run game. Oh man.
And John Lester would not hold on a single runner. I just get a guy who could hold a runner on. The team's full of jackrabbits.
Oh man.
I'm still mad. I'm still mad at that game.
That had me screaming.
It was great going to the World Series with my dad. It was great going to the World Series with my dad. Blah 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 blah. Everyone's crying, but I would like to see the A's actually win that freaking game.
Oh man! And at least because that would have been the team. Could you imagine what if that trade itself of Yoenis Cespedes did not happen? They were the best team in the American League. They had the most wins. They were the most powerful up on offense. You could not pitch. And then all of a sudden now I'm looking at the Astros, and it's just like the A's could have been there had it not been for that just disastrous trade that just ultimately.
By the way, trade that Boston fans hated even more. I've never seen a trade that both sides hated equally.
I couldn't even believe it. But I'll tell you what, though, man, your baseball history is what I love so much about the game. Like that's why I'm like, that's why I'm like being at Coors Field. And to give you a fun thing, I have a project, but a project, of course, is going to involve recognizing the now Hall of Fame inductee, Todd Helton. Long time Colorado Rocky. I mean, it's a way to give back. It's a way to just recognize what he meant. Yeah, a Tennessee Volunteer alumni, but a long-time Rocky that meant something to just the city of Denver is just one of those things. Yeah, homegrown. Oh yeah. And so I'll be there in Coors. I'm going to be sipping a Coors. I'm going to be having some great food, enjoying the weather, and that backdrop of that outfield with the fountains is just immaculate.
Can I just tell you? I know we're running a little long here, and eventually I have to make dinner for my son. But one of my favorite memories for a team that wasn't my team was when the Rockies won the pennant in 07.
Yeah.
And it was the moment, of course, that team, they went on that wild, they were on the verge of elimination for like 2 weeks. So they couldn't lose. And they had the wild game 163. And then they sweep a pretty good Phillies team.
Mm-hmm.
And then they go up against the D-backs, and they're on the verge of sweeping the D-backs. And when, the previous year, there was rumors was Helton going to be traded to Boston, was going to be traded here, was Helton going to be traded there. And he catches the final out. Eric Burns is trying to do the stupid head first slide to first, but the ball, I think it was Atkins was the third baseman. I'm doing some of this from memory, but I think Atkins was the third baseman. He throws it to Helton, and Helton catches it. And usually the image you see of a clinching is the pitcher jumping up and down.
Yep.
But Helton held his hands up and looked up as if to say, I'm going to the World Series with the Rockies.
Finally.
He could have gone to Boston, and I'm sure the champagne would be great. He could have gone to another team, could have gone to the Mets or the Dodgers or some other team, and I'm sure it would have been, oh, yes, I'm finally in, kind of like when Paul Molitor won a World Series with the 1993 Blue Jays after all those years toiling in Milwaukee.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm going with my team that I invested my life, that I signed the long term, and it paid off. Now they got their clocks cleaned by the Red Sox, but nobody thought that was going to happen. And that moment of pure joy of I stuck around and this is the reward is, I think, absolutely one of the most magical moments I've ever seen for a team that I had zero interest. There's not one molecule of my body, not one molecule of my body was a Rockies fan.
I mean, good Lord. I mean, when you put them in the 90s, when you had then the Tampa Bay Devil Rays, and it was just like, they're just there. But it was like, they then make this magical run, and it's like, oh, wow. And they had great talents. Troy Tulowitzki, Matt Holliday and Brad Hopp.
And who else was on that team? You had Atkins.
Atkins.
My namesake Corey Sullivan was on that team. Willie Tavares. I'm doing something from memory. Willie Tavares was on that team.
Willie Tavares.
Matsui was on there.
Kazu Matsui.
Garrett Atkins. Tori Alaba was their catcher.
Yep.
And they had Ryan. Ryan. What was it? Burrows was.
Yeah, Ryan Burrows. Or Ryan Spilborghs.
Ryan Spilborg, thank you.
Oh yeah,
Spilborg, yeah.
Brad Hopp and Clint Barnes.
Barmes was batting like eighth on that team, and they had Ubaldo Jimenez, and let's see if I remember Josh Fogg, Jeff Francis, and forgive me, I don't remember the fourth starter of the 2007, but Fuentes was their closer.
Brian Fuentes, yep.
Yeah, and they had LaTroy Hawkins was in that bullpen. And they had a baseball lifer in Clint Hurdle as the manager. So I just think that's great.
God, amazing memories. But Sully, I appreciate you coming up on by, man. Where can people find so much more of the baseball history and everything you got to say, from your daily podcast to the Lockdown? Where can people find you?
You listen to the show. Locked On MLB. We're on YouTube. We're on anywhere you catch your podcasts. My old show, the old Sully Baseball Daily Show, I did from 2012 to 2017, and then I started this one a few years ago because the Locked On Podcast Network was generous enough to hire me. And then this year, the A's host, because Locked On has a show for every team, the A's host had to leave for a medical reason, and there was no A's host when the what was hitting the fan regarding Vegas and Sacramento. And I said, like, these fans need a voice. And I said, well, I know I've forgotten more about the A's than most people have known, so I'll do that. And they said, well, you're doing Locked On MLB. I said, I'll do both. And so I have on 10 episodes a day. But also check out on YouTube, go to Sully Baseball, where you can also see some of my videos, including every year I do an in memoriam video, kind of like they have at the Oscars, where we pay tribute just before the season begins for the players we've lost since the previous opening day. And I try to make it, I try to pull the heartstrings. I'm shameless about it. This one ends with Brooks Robinson, and if you don't cry at the end of that one, then that's kind of like the test in Blade Runner when they find out whether or not you're a replicant android or not, because that's the only way you can get to the end of, I'm crying while I was editing them. But check those out at Sully Baseball, or just follow me on Twitter or whatever the hell it's called now, at Sully Baseball. I always link the episodes that I do, and my pinned tweet is the most recent in memoriam video. So check that out.
Well, there you go, folks. Everything that you need to know, baseball history and more. Sully's got it there for you. Definitely check him out. Appreciate you for coming on by, man. And honestly, like, I've had many Locked On people on the show. And
yeah, you had Stacey Gotsulias on. Yeah.
I had Stacey Gotsulias. I had Alex Clancy. I had David Drugman. I had so many people. And I may actually have Trevor Beggs tomorrow. So I will have a lot of people I can't help but appreciate the quality that they've been giving. So well done from there. And loved every minute of it, man. But appreciate you taking the time coming on by. So entertaining. I know your comical self, man. What an interview. But love
nice 20-minute conversation we had, huh? You said it's going to take about 20 minutes. It's like the Lord of the Rings. It's the Lord of the Rings here. We've had so many endings. But
right.
This is a blast, Jake. This is an absolute blast. Thanks for having me on your show.
Absolutely, man. Take care of yourself. And like I said, whatever happens from here on out with the A's, I just hope that the team gets the respect it needs. There you go. Rooted in Oakland, staying in Oakland, but you know what? You rep them no matter what. There you go. Take care of yourself, man. Thank you.
Take care, buddy.
Yeah, I've always had such a soft spot for the A's for a long time. I mean, I've got A's gear myself. And I'm just hoping that Vegas does it right. That's my hope of it. But yeah, it's going to be interesting. I just am I look at the ownership and all the rest of it. It'll be such an interesting conversation all the way through it. But I hope that they do this right. All right, folks. Well, I got to get out of here. What a great conversation from here. But appreciated Paul Sullivan for joining us on here on the show. Locked On MLB, Locked On A's, and Sully Baseball. Appreciate for him for taking the time. Show sponsored by BetUS. Go online today. The sports betting books is going nuts. We've got Timberwolves, Mavs. Will the Mavs pull it off and get to the final, or will the T-Wolves spoil it and go to live another day? Stanley Cup playoffs, absolutely phenomenal, and almost to the road to the Stanley Cup final. Who will be representing? Many bet lines, even baseball bet lines, are all there at BetUS.com. $50 or more deposit, 200% bonuses with 30 risk-free bets. BetUS, where the game begins, and SeatGeek, $20 off of your first purchase by using Snake Sports as your promo code for the best seat in the house at the most affordable price at SeatGeek.com. Also on your downloaded mobile device to Google Play in the App Store. Take care of yourselves, guys. Jake Silva signing off. We will see you tomorrow. Trevor Beggs is going to be coming on here, Locked On Canucks. We will see you guys tomorrow, the next episode of the Snake Sports Talk Show. Take care, you guys.